You probably read today the story about Iran has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran. And we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal.
President Trump says a deal is close. Iran signaling it is open to scaling back its nuclear program if the United States lifts economic sanctions. President Trump has rallied the Middle East around the U.S. this week, isolating Iran. It's astonishing what we've been able to just watch in real time go on in the Middle East. David, have you ever seen anything like it? And it's really all started with enforcement of sanctions against Iran's oil program, which Biden and company ignored for 4 years and allowed Iran to enrich itself and fund terrorism that resulted in the death of Israelis and Americans.
And it's no exaggeration to say that were it not for that, we probably would not have had October 7th. I mean, It's just that simple. That was one of the key factors in starting that war. But at the same time, it's very interesting to hear what he said about Iran. I think he is absolutely, this isn't just a talking point for Trump. I think he's really serious. He knows that Iran has this great potential. If they get off of this terrorist jig that they've been on for at least the past 4 years, and of course, subterraneously, they were on it a lot before that. There was a wonderful entrepreneur I knew named Peter Sprague. He owned Aston Martin for a while. He owned a lot of different companies. He was quite a character. But he also had the largest cold storage facility in Tehran. He lost it the day after the revolution, so he didn't have it anymore. But he used to tell me that the best entrepreneurs in the whole world were in Iran. Wow. Iranian entrepreneurs were the absolute best. And he said, eventually, someday, somebody's going to come in and recognize that and turn that country around. I think Donald Trump wants to be that guy. I think you're right. And so, as many of you know, and I've shared this, my mom came here before the revolution from Iran. And she describes what it was like to me, before she came to the United States. And by the way, she's never been able to go back. As the Paris of the Middle East under the Shah, there was a lot of business happening there with other countries. They were very respected. What you see now since 1979 is a regime that is oppressive, that fuels terrorism, that is, over the line, hardline religious. And basically, for me, what you would have to see is President Trump continue to put the pressure on here, not just for the nuclear aspect of it, but also to bring this regime down. You're never going to stop the terrorism. You're never going to get the country to flourish again until these people are out. Right. As you also know, I have gone back and spent some time in the region just to try to understand the fanaticism of it and what it's all about. It is so deeply rooted, culturally speaking, in the minds of certain people that are on the extreme fringes. If you don't take the regime out, you'll never fix it. So I've also interviewed the Crown Prince, former Crown Prince of Iran, and he's said the same thing. You've got to create a situation where the nuclear weapons scale back, but they create a situation where the people can rise up and get rid of this government. Otherwise, nothing's going to change.
Brian, I'll point out in terms of economic pressure that the United States can put on Iran now, because oil demand is pulling back in large part because of China's weakness, and oil supplies are increasing, that this is a moment where a ripe moment to really cripple Iran. And it plays what Saudi Arabia has been doing by also pumping oil as the lead producer in OPEC. They have been joined at the hip with the United States and really presenting a united front to disempower Iran.
And just one quick thing. I mean, he's only in office a couple of months and he's reinstituted the sanctions, and they're saying, let's talk about things, because the sanctions hurt them. And if they don't have the revenue coming in, they can't stand up. They can't keep going.
And Iran sees President Trump rebuilding quickly a relationship with Saudi Arabia and now all these other nations in the Middle East.
Brian, just quickly on the sanctions. And Jackie, David, everyone on this panel can weigh in if you disagree. I feel like there have been some reports that we've, in many cases, overused the sanction of the dollar. And so you have countries like Iran going to the Russian ruble or the Chinese yuan. The dollar is still king dollar. We are the world's reserve currency, bar none. But the longer we wait and the more willing they become to rely on a ruble or a yuan,
And the bigger our debt gets?
the less effective dollar sanctions are on them, or financial sanctions. And so I agree that the time is now or almost never. The longer you wait, the harder it is, because I'm afraid that these sanctions get less effective financially over time, reducing the dependence on the dollar.
That may be. Apparently, right now, they're quite effective.
Good.
Because they turned the screws a little harder, and Iran said, can we talk? Can we do this? This is what they're saying they're going to do as part of this deal. I don't know. This is what's being reported. Abandoning pursuit of nuclear weapons, eliminate highly enriched uranium stockpiles, and allowing full international inspections. Now, that's the kicker, because they say that and they don't do it, all right? They would if they don't do that, none of the other stuff matters. So that's the big one here. But I do find this is fascinating to me. If you got that, because President Trump was deft enough to go to the Middle East and get all these countries back in the fold and create massive pressure on Iran and go after the Houthis and tell Israel we've got your back. He did all that stuff and he set that up, and Iran was like a bowling pin and the bowling ball was heading straight forward, and they said, can we call a timeout right now? The critique of Trump as somebody who would destroy world alliances has been so dismantled by what he has done. Now, I know there's countries that are mad at him. The EU doesn't like him and so forth, whatever, but they're all lining up to try to do a deal. That was one of the biggest lies told in the election, is that Trump would reduce our world standing. He has elevated it to a point 100%. I've never seen before.
I think Aaron Cohen said on the bottom line yesterday, President Trump has a black belt in diplomatic jujitsu.
Well said.
He's like, it's the doggonest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.